everybody, and good evening. The time is 9:05. Today's date is October 18th, 2020. if, if Oh my God, I have to really start working on this damn intro. Sorry, guys. If you guys come into this channel and you guys are listening to this, dude, I swear to God, I think that part of the show is going to drive you guys nuts, or you either going to murder me for it or give me different ideas. I don't know. Good evening, everybody. First of all, thank you for coming back to this episode. I know some of you probably heard the update that I put out on TikTok regarding some of the content of the episodes for today. I will be diving in a little bit different into what I've done historically. And the episode that I did yesterday or earlier, I think in the week, was a little somber. I did go into a little bit of a personal story of mine, not necessarily my own in particular, but those people around me whom I know and cherish and love very much, and some of the stuff that they went through. Again, the purpose and objective of the channel is to kind of bring light and shed some light and bridge a gap between the youth and the adults, and kind of have the youth have a sense and understanding of why we are how we are, and before they go off the hinges and try to make us feel bad about us being one particular way, maybe this is a good channel for them to listen to so they can have a better sense. Now, again, like I mentioned in the episode yesterday, it does not give you carte blanche, the green light to act like an asshole. Okay, let's just make that very clear. If you're just a douchebag, you're just a douchebag. But hopefully, as a parent, hopefully we're able to manage our emotions better, remind ourselves what worked back then growing up and what definitely didn't work now and what's going to work now, and just kind of navigating ourselves through that. But a little bit about today. So today on Saturday, my daughter had an early game, soccer game, like around 9 o'clock in the morning. And their team did phenomenal. I mean, it's incredible, like how young kids can just, with a snap of a finger, get on the field and play their butts off and perform to the maximum of their ability. I mean, the gameplay that I saw, I mean, mind you, I have not seen the girls probably in training in about a week. And then before that, my wife and I have been sharing responsibility on who's taking who to training, etc. Right? So it's been a little bit different, but definitely the vibe was awesome, seeing the rest of the parents who I haven't seen in a minute. And I'll dive into that part a little bit later, of the relationships that you build and the friendships that you make along this path, along this journey when your kids are doing sports or competitive dance is pretty cool. You run into people that you probably wouldn't normally engage with or interact with on a day-to-day basis. Hell, I mean, I'm sure I'm probably not the type of person maybe some of these folks might have considered to befriend at one point, right? You just never know. With so many different personality types, you just never know these days, honestly. But apart from that, it was a great morning. Came home and we decided to finally finish building my oldest daughter's trampoline. Man, if any of you have experience in building stuff outside the backyard, damn. I mean, first of all, we, like a little bit peeling back the onion, my wife and I, we purchased this secondhand trampoline which basically had never been used. And then we bought it and we purchased it and we put it together. And when I tell you it was a shit show putting it together, damn it was. And nobody really tells you how difficult it is putting these things together until you get in the habit of doing it and you're assembling shit without literally no instruction manual. So my wife and I literally, of course, because you can find everything on YouTube, right? You can find instructional videos, how to put plaster on a wall, how to paint. There's instructional videos for everything. And it just so happened we were just spending all our time just looking for how to put a trampoline together. And I'll tell you that it's a hell of a lot more difficult than they make it out to be. But anyway, that's a long story. Secondly, is they don't tell you how to assemble stuff properly and in a safe way. And when I tell you, I got on a ladder and I was nervous, dude. I was like, oh my God, who's going to be recording me nearby? Because I might end up falling off this damn ladder. It was just nuts. The other thing, though, too, I did want to make a comment, though. Cities and schools and parks, can we get our ish together and can we do better maintenance on these damn fields? I mean, the soccer field that we went today, I kid you not, that thing looked like it had not been mowed in weeks. Completely uneven. There's potholes everywhere. Like, obviously the presence of ground squirrels is extremely prevalent, and you can seriously tell. It is just nuts, right? So when we get there in the morning, we notice that the lawns have not been cut, but then, mind you, there had been a last minute change in fields from one day to the next. So then I'm sure that the city was not necessarily prepared to get this field ready within 24 hours. So it was a little bit, let's just say, very, very rough. Very, very rough. But apart from that, it was an overall great game. My daughter played amazing. All the rest of the girls played great. I think they probably should have beat that game or beat that team probably by 6-0. But unfortunately, like, in soccer, the balls just weren't going in. And then one of them in particular, one of the girls booted it with her left, a massive, phenomenal strike, and it just hit the post. So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we've been on the other side of those games where we've been completely massacred and it just doesn't go your way. But I digress. So what are we going to be talking about today? Well, I'm not sure if many of you listening are into these conspiracy theories, right? And now I don't want to tune you out. So please, all right, hear me out. Hear me out. Please just don't stop listening to the podcast. Just listen. So the older I get, either I'm getting more effing senile, more paranoid, whatever the hell you want to call it, but I seem to be more alert and aware of when I'm being played. And I don't know if that's all of you listening, but it feels lately like we are being coached or mentored or guided to feel and act and behave a certain way. And I don't like it. Whether it's a political narrative that they want to drive, whether it's a movement that they want to emphasize, it's just something weird. Everything that I see on the news, on social media and things like that, it doesn't feel real anymore. It feels like we're just being fed all this stupid nonsense that just seriously doesn't make any damn sense. And that prompted me to seriously think about other things in particular. Like, well, if I'm feeling this now, what other items can we think about that maybe we are being lied to? All right. And then I think about my own kids, right? Even with our own children, we withhold some information just because that, as parents, that's what we feel we need to do to protect them. Or if we want to drive a narrative, we have to use examples, and sometimes we have to bend the truth. And I feel that politics in real life right now is really doing that with us. And like I said a few minutes ago, I just honestly don't like it, whether it's education, whether it's some of the books that our kids are having access to, whether it's some of the narratives and agendas that are being fed onto our children at such a young age. I don't know. It's just weird. So then, of course, when you Google conspiracy theories, there's a whole bunch of them, right? There's flat earth theory. There is, that we've never went to the moon. We haven't gone to the moon. That we don't dive into the bottom of the ocean because we have a deal with another species or society that lives under the ocean. There's another theory that there's hitting military bases underneath Shasta, and other various places. I mean, things like that. But there are some that honestly, the more I dig into it, the more I find interesting. And I'm going to share three of those in particular and provide some data, right? Some information that hopefully you guys will be able to enjoy. And the first one that to me jumped out, and it's something that I've done some research on this stuff, and I'm just like, the more I dig into it, damn it, it just goes like down the rabbit hole. Then I'm just like, I literally have to pull back and be like, dude, I'm not going to continue reading these articles because number one, I'll never freaking go to sleep, and I'm gonna start thinking different shit. And I'm just like, dude, I gotta get some rest. I have enough of stuff in my mind that prompts me as an active mind that causes me to have restless sleep. So I can't even freaking get to sleep because I'm always thinking about stuff, right? Whether it's my own personal items, paying bills, mortgage, whatever it is, what we're going to do tomorrow. It's just constantly active. But let me tell you something. So the Great Pyramid of Giza, okay, was built during the reign of the Pharaoh Khufu. Okay. He was one of the first ones back in 2589, and his reign was from 2589, I think, to like 2566 BCE. Okay. Before Common Era, or like I like to say it, BC, before Christ. Again, I'm a Christian and Catholic. Again, I just don't like the whole BCE crap. Anyway, moving on. That one stands as one of the most enduring marvels of an ancient engineering, right? But despite of centuries of exploration and research, this is considered an architectural masterpiece because, believe it or not, peoples, it continues to hold secrets. And recently there's been technological advancements that have allowed people to actually try to explore it. And when they did like this ground penetrating radar, where basically they tried to do like an x-ray of the actual pyramid, they realized that there was way more previously unknown voids and hidden chambers within the structure that nobody knew about. I mean, we're talking about up until like 2017 or 2015 is when they finally found this out. Mind you, this pyramid has been around for a long time. It's been constantly monitored, surveyed. It's been explored. There's been a lot of people's hands in this pyramid, and yet we just barely found these voids and hidden chambers, right, within the structure. So that in itself should tell you how trippy it is. And a little bit of historical context. The Great Pyramid is the largest of the three in Giza. So that's the biggest one. When you see the three of them laid out in Egypt, that is the most, like, just not gaudy. That's a disrespectful word, but it's more like it stands alone as how in the hell did they make that thing, right? It's absolutely built perfect. I mean, every aspect of it, the location, how it lines up with the stars, is just on a whole different level. Mind you, this was built in 2589 BCE, when supposedly people barely had any sort of tools or equipment. Yeah, think about that one. Yeah, right. So it was constructed originally as a royal tomb. And then over time, explorers and archaeologists have uncovered various internal passageways. And I think including the King's Chamber, they called it, and the Queen's Chamber. And then there was an area called the Grand Gallery. But not all of the pyramid internally was fully mapped or understood. And then it kind of went by the wayside, and nobody was like, okay, well, can we continue digging? And I'll kind of dive into what part of that kind of makes it weird for me. And then most recently, there was a technological study that provided new insight. And the Scan Pyramids Project, which was back in 2015, was an initiative that employed a non-invasive technique such as muon radiography, infrared, thermo, and 3D reconstruction to detect anomalies within the pyramid. So they x-rayed the pyramid to look for all these chambers and hidden secrets and things that might have been missed. And they found a whole bunch of stuff. And then in 2017, what's called like the big void, the scientists identified a large, previously unknown cavity above the grand gallery. And it measured maybe about 30 meters in length. And its purpose remains speculative. So nobody knows why it's there. And then some theories were saying that it's an engineering counterweight to a hidden burial chamber. However, some of the things that some of you might not know, they have never found a tomb inside the pyramid. Any of them. Think about that. Supposedly built and created for the pharaohs, and they were all buried inside and left in there. However, nothing has ever been found inside of these places, which makes you think, then what was their true purpose? And then back as most recently in 2023, the North Face corridor, there was a newly discovered passageway behind the pyramid's north face, which raised even more questions about its function. So for me, it kind of makes me a little bit curious, because I'm like, okay, so we have this pyramid, we have difficulties excavating it or exploring it, and then we find some stuff, and then all of a sudden it stops. And here are some of the challenges in exploration that the Egyptian government tells you. There's the preservation concern, which basically a direct excavation could compromise the pyramid's stability and integrity. So their concern is basically that, hey, if we dig too much, it might collapse on itself, which I think that's BS. Number two, technological limitations. Current remote sensing methods provide limited resolution, making precise identification of chamber contents challenging. So they can't see any further. Well, no shit. You have like a big, massive block of rock inside, and you expect to see it. The fact that we've been able to map what we have and find those voids and gaps should be enough. And then the last and the final one, while the government refuses to go any further, was that there's ethical considerations, the cultural and historical significance of the Great Pyramid. So that is, for me, the biggest thing. So you have these wonderful and amazing architectural wonders that the government itself hinders anybody to dig any further, because the concern is that it's going to basically flip what we know of history upside down. And honestly, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know how you listening feel about it. If you knew that the pyramids had all these hidden chambers, would it upset you if the government say, hey, we're not going to continue digging? Or are you of the school of thought that says, no, I want to dig in more and find out what the hell is going on and what's there? Now, again, mind you, the consequences of that is basically if you go ahead and you dig into these places and you find what you find, and it basically throws everything that you've been taught and everything that you believed in, it throws it by the wayside. Are you ready mentally to deal with that? Now, apparently the Egyptian government feels that, yes, whatever those contents are within the pyramid are strong enough and they are basically off the wall so much, completely different so much, that it will throw everything that they've taught the people for so many years by the wayside. That throws a whole bunch of stuff into question. That throws into religious beliefs, that throws government beliefs, that throws values and knowledge and everything by the wayside. But are we doing ourselves a disservice by simply saying, oh, okay, they don't want to dig, and we completely go on about our day? Or should there be more challenges from folks and demand access to these areas, demand the digging to continue so you can actually find out what's really there? Could you guys imagine if we find tablets within the pyramids that tells us how they were in fact actually built? Now, because mind you, to this day, there's been a constant battle within a lot of science and archaeologists of how the pyramids were built. Some people say that you had 50,000 slaves putting obelisks together and carrying rocks and limestone and slaves and all that. Some people feel that the obelisks were actually built and then underneath is just one big massive one, and all we're seeing from the pyramids is just a tip. I mean, if that's the case, it's pretty fucking scary. And and what we know about the past and the people that lived in it is even scarier, because it makes you think, what the hell happened to those folks? So then it sparks interest even more for me to know more and dig in more. And this is exactly why I didn't want to go down the conspiracy theory narrative, because it just creates even more interest. So I was digging even a little more, because I was like, all right, what else is out there, guys? That's kind of like really, 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 really strange. Well, since we're on the topic of Egypt, let's talk about the Sphinx. So, for centuries, the great Sphinx of Giza has stood as a symbol of mystery, power, and ancient genius. It was carved from bedrock near the Great Pyramids. It's been long considered a monument of Egypt's Old Kingdom, dating back to most archaeologists around 2500 BC. Okay, but what if that's wrong? Think about it. If we're wrong about the Great Pyramid of Giza, what if we're wrong about this as well? And let me explain before you pull back and you're like, Oscar, what the fuck are you talking about? Let me explain this. What if the Sphinx is not 4,500 years old, but more like 10,000? 10,000. Okay. And let me explain why. And the theory is grounded not in myth, but in the erosion patterns etched into the stone itself. If you guys don't know what erosion is basically the indentation that's created in stone after constant water flow. So if you put a rock, a regular limestone rock, and for centuries a drop of water continues to drop in that same particular exact spot, it will erode away so much with time that eventually that rock will have a hole directly in the middle of it where the water always hit it for centuries. That's erosion. So what they found around the bedrock of the Sphinx is that there has been signs of erosion. And unlike the pyramids that were built from stacked blocks, the Sphinx was carved directly from limestone, which makes traditional carbon dating impossible. So this opens the door for a deeper question. Can a geological clues like rainwater erosion reveal the true age of its iconic monument? Could the Sphinx have been there before the pharaohs and even point to a forgotten civilization? Again, I go back to that. Are we okay with them telling us, nah, man, we built it, slaves built it, the Egyptians built it, they did everything, bro. All right? And this great Sphinx was built by them, for this narrative, right? Now, again, you find things and you fill in the gaps of the stuff that you don't know and the stuff that you don't understand. And then there's controversy in regards to the Sphinx head. Yes, and its potential alignment to the stars is just a little weird. And then, so let's explore a couple things, right? Before I lose y'all. So how did the archaeologists even date the Great Sphinx. Okay? Carbon dating, right? Now, unlike the Great Pyramid, which is built from like millions of meticulous stacked limestone, again, millions, all right, y'all? Millions. If you don't know how many blocks of those were built or used to make that pyramid, it should put into perspective as to if you can sit there and honestly fucking convince me and tell me that that was built by us with zero technology. Anyway, moving on. The Great Sphinx of Giza was carved directly from the bedrock of the Giza Plateau. And it was basically one big, huge, massive rock, and then they built the Sphinx around it. All right. But since the Sphinx contains no organic materials like wood, cloth, or bone, it can't be carbon dated. So again, they just took a freaking wild guess. They just saw this thing here in the middle of the desert. They buried it, and they're like, we dated the pyramid about 2,500 years old. This thing must be about the same. I mean, if you really think about it, that's the most ridiculous thing you can honestly think about. Like, so think about it. Oh, hey, this pyramid's about based on the exams, about 5,000. What about that rock right there, bud? That was about 5,000 too. Because you can't get anything from it. So you're just taking wild guesses. So we're just putting dates and numbers to these things that we find, and then we leave it be. But as technology progresses and it gets better and it evolves, you can go back and look at these things and you're like, shit, maybe we were wrong, dude. Maybe it wasn't 2,500. Maybe it's more than that. You guys know how silly and stupid that looks? And I can see maybe that's why the Egyptian government is hesitant, and so are archaeologists, to go back on their original assessment and theory of it. Because if they go back and say, hey guys, by the way, we were wrong on the day, dude. Actually, it's more like 10,000. You're going to be like, what? Where the hell did you pull that number from? You pulled that number out of your butt? Like, where'd that come from, right? So since the Sphinx, like I said, doesn't have any of that. That's pretty much the date. So archaeology, right? You have to be mindful. It's like reading a book where most of the pages are missing. And so you have to fill in the gaps, and that's what they do. And kudos to them, because they get it right sometimes. But these now, since technology is evolving, you're realizing that shit, dude, maybe we got it all wrong. And so the prevailing academic view links the Sphinx to the pharaoh Khafre, also known as Khafre or Chephren. I think it's spelled like Chephren. And he ruled Egypt during the 4th dynasty around 2600 to 2500 BC. And that theory rests largely on two pieces of evidence. The facial resemblance. So Egyptologists, fuck, I can't even say it. Egyptologists, oh my gosh, what time is it? 9:34. Yeah, sorry guys. Egyptologists argue that the Sphinx head bears similarity to known statues of Khafre. So they're assuming that, hey, he found it because he put his face on it. Again, if we really think about the way these things are really being analyzed and determined on dates, it's pretty freaking silly. Think about what I just said, all right? The Egyptologists argue that the Sphinx's head was built by Khafre because his head is on various statues and they all look the same. Think about that. That means I could go outside right now, and if I find a rock and I carve my image into it in multiple places and I drop it off and 1,000 years go by, everybody will think that I built all that shit. When it could have been me just putting random blocks and limestone everywhere with my image in it. It's goofy, but that's facts. And then the temple context. So in 1853, French archaeologist Augustin Mariette unearthed a life-sized, remarkably detailed statue of Khafre and buried in the ruins of what's now called the Valley Temple, just besides the Sphinx. So that finding led to a widely accepted belief that Khafre commissioned the Sphinx. He had it built. possibly as a guardian to his funerary complex or as a symbolic extension of his divine authority. You don't know. Again, we can't ask the guy. But here is the weird thing. Egyptians were very big on hieroglyphs, and they placed hieroglyphs on everything that was of great importance to them. They put messages, they put prayers, they put theories of where you would go in your next life, if you've been good or bad, everything that you accomplished within your life, within your dynasty or your reign would be detailed. So generally speaking, wherever they buried you, wherever that was, they would place all your accomplishments in it. It was basically your resume before you passed on. So whenever they built these things and archaeologists came across these things, they would have writings from archaeology, from hieroglyphs on these things, so you can be like, oh my gosh, maybe they are tied together. But that's not the case. So there hasn't been any hieroglyphs directly associated with Khafre, with the Sphinx. There's no inscriptions claiming credit. There's no royal cartouches. There's no nothing. There's just circumstantial connections, estimated dates, supporting evidence, gaps, nothing. There's no direct inscription of written claim on the Sphinx itself. So Khafre never claimed it. We gave it and automatically based it that it was him to begin with. So if he didn't build it, who built? Who did it? Well, this is where the conspiracy theory comes in. When people are digging more research and asking why the Great Sphinx was just different from the rest, and they couldn't find a dynasty to claim it, they started digging at the rocks, they started looking at the erosion and the patterns, and something just wasn't jiving. The vertical fissures observed in the walls of the Sphinx, it shows like diagnostic signs of having been formed by precipitation and water runoff. And that was per Mr. Dr. Robert Scotch, geologist from Yale, PhD. And it makes sense. And then now the mainstream Egyptologists continue to date the Sphinx 2500 BC as part of the Pharaoh Khafre's pyramid complex. But again, I go back to none of that has been proven. But the erosion patterns of the Sphinx and its enclosure are far older. Those erosion patterns likely are dating the Sphinx to 10,000 to 12,000 BC. 10,000 to 12,000 BC, when the climate in that area was full of water. It wasn't a desert. There was water. So this is why that theory changes a lot of things. The geological clue. The Sphinx enclosure walls are deeply weathered by vertical, rounded fissures, right? And not only that, but then climactic match. Egypt's last major wet period, guys, occurred during the late 10,500 BC, known as the African humid period. So again, it is just different. And then comparative geology, the Khafre puzzle. Adjacent structures like the Valley Temple, believed to have been built from quarried blocks removed during the Sphinx's carving, show a far less erosion, even though they're from the same geological layer. But it's just so different. And then not only that, so the one theory that me particular that I think, and again, this is just my opinion, I personally think that the Sphinx was originally a lioness or a jackal. And one of the most overlooked but striking features of the Great Sphinx, and I'm sure you guys know, are the proportions. The Sphinx's head is too small in relation to his massive body, and is a complete contradiction when you consider that the same civilization that built the Great Pyramid with crazy alignment to true north and in precise ratio to Earth's mass and the golden mean, for a culture that was so freaking particular and so exact on their measurements, for them to build a structure that is not proportional just doesn't make a lick of freaking sense. Me personally, I think it was originally a lioness or a jackal that was there along with the pyramid. The Egyptians found it, Khafre claimed it to some sense, or somebody decided to go ahead and do it for him, and they chopped it to pieces to make it look like him. But they forgot about the rest of his body, and they just never finished it. So it looks like it's more like a retrofit. And then facial features differ stylistically. Weathering in the head is less severe, suggesting that newer surface than the body. So when you look at the erosion and damage and weather on the face as opposed to the rest of the body, the damage in the face is newer than the one that's in the body. How the fuck is that possible? If you build something at the same time, how the hell is the face going to be in better shape than the body? Think about that. And those are facts. And then the Sphinx aligned with the stars. Today, the Sphinx faces due east, a stance that makes it appear to greet the rising sun. But during the time, around 10,500, it would also be gazed directly to the constellation of Leo. Think about it. Jackal, lion, lioness. It just doesn't make any freaking sense. And then here's the other kicker. When they've been doing analysis on the particular Sphinx, there's also chambers and secrets and things that are hidden within the Sphinx that Egypt refuses to excavate. So why? That makes absolutely no sense to me. That's the part that we go back to the whole thing of, what are we being told? And what's the big fear? It just doesn't make any sense to me that these things that we've been taught and that we are actually teaching our children, all these theories, all these stories, more than likely are going to change within the 10 to 15 years. And it goes back to the possibility of other civilizations that existed and predated our own. And just because we haven't found any clues to them, or we ignore the clues to them, does not make it that they did not exist. And I will touch on a city that shouldn't even exist because it threw the timeline of our existing history by the wayside. So in Turkey, there was basically a farmer who was out there grazing with his animals in Turkey. And he just happens to trip and fall over this particular rock that he found, this big old boulder. And so he digs it out, trying to move it for whatever purpose. And he notices that it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So he got other villagers to go out there with him and help expose this stuff. And what they found out was that this was part of a much bigger structure. So they proceeded to go ahead and get the city involved, and they started digging even more. And what they found was completely incredible. So, and I hope I don't butcher the name, Göbekli Tepe should not exist. And how old it is, how much this predates our existing time of what people thought. Around 6,000 years before early peoples of Britain were gathering at Stonehenge 6,000 years before Stonehenge. A similar structure was being painstakingly constructed thousands of miles away in the hills of Turkey in the Syrian border. So the pre-Neolithic structure of Göbekli Tepe has intrigued a puzzled archaeologists and historians for decades recently. Large circles of towering limestone T-shaped pillars dominate the site, some of them rising 16 feet into the sky. Through like carbon dating, etc., it was basically built between 12,000 before 9,600 to 12,000 BC. So some theories have vigorously discussed and debated since the site was first uncovered in the 1960s, with some suggesting it's a temple. Other people think that it's a burial place. Recent research adds to the speculation with signs that there was a permanent settlement in the area. But while there's many unanswered questions around the ancient mystery, its importance is beyond a doubt. One of the most outstanding things about the site is its timing. Built before agriculture, before pottery, and possible before organized religion as we understand it, that doesn't make any sense. It's hard to imagine the civilization that managed to erect such a sophisticated monument with its huge pillars and intricate carvings to a lesser society. So for one thing, Göbekli Tepe was built in a pre-Neolithic age when humans were hunter and gatherers. They were living nomadic lifestyles and moving in small groups. Okay, so them building Göbekli Tepe would have required the workers to settle in one place during its construction. So that leads people to theorize that the site was prompted or at least herald the development of agriculture. If people were going to build and attend a place of worship like this, they would have needed the means to form a self-sustaining settlement there, right? In this way, this is the part that makes it so interesting, and he threw everybody by the wayside. We're supposed to be hunter and gatherers at this time. We're shooting arrows, barely freaking playing with fire. And over here, and we apparently built a structure like this. So discoveries like Göbekli Tepe are rewriting the story of human history, and it's happening now as we speak in our time. Filling in some of the blanks around the civilization shift and early peoples from hunter-gatherers to farmers, work at the site is ongoing, actually, right now. And new theories are developing as to the sacred space and what it really is. Like there's over 20 structures that Göbekli Tepe made up of large limestone pillars. Some of these pillars are over 16 feet, like I mentioned earlier. And at least one, y'all, is estimated to weigh about 50 tons, arranged in rings. The pillars are not all uniform. Some display finely basically drawn up carvings of animals, including foxes, scorpions, lions, and vultures. Others feature designs of humans and pieces of clothing. The pillars themselves appear to be anthropomorphic, decorated in what would appear to be arms and faces. You know, so after being discovered in the 1960s, Göbekli Tepe was abandoned in favor of other digs in the area, okay? Think about that. And then it revived again in the late 1960s, and the next phase of research uncovered several more structures, allowing archaeologists to categorize them into ordinary building and special buildings. So there's multiple places just like Göbekli Tepe, literally around it. And you're telling me this is over 12,000 years old when people are barely supposed to be playing with arrows, lifting apparently 50,000 tons of rock and limestone and putting it together, and then carving intricate stuff in stone. The special building are for those in particular, because they found multiple buildings, a special building for those that show No evidence of occupation of both the largest, most ornate pillars from the structures of the pillars, some facing inwards, some angled towards others. Archaeologists believe that these structures were an important, perhaps sacred meeting place. Farmers, hunter, gatherers, people? Come on. But here is my problem. While we find these places that have this historical significance, Turkey decides to build this massive structure around Göbekli Tepe to make money off of it. Do you understand the level of work that would have to go around Göbekli Tepe without impacting it? That's impossible. But yet the government feels it's important for them to monetize this and make money off of it and destroy the shit out of something that is completely ridiculously historical. But here's the other kicker. Turkey, to this date right now, has refused to resume excavation. Why? What are they afraid of? And this is my conclusion to this. Now, you can say that conspiracy theories are those for people who are just bored and don't have shit to do. But as I get older, I'm telling you, I start to question more. And call me silly, call me paranoid, or whatever it is, but I'm not okay with accepting what I was taught when I was growing up. Because if me reading into this, and us human beings have found that we've been wrong on some of the stuff that we presumed was right, why can't we be wrong about how old we really are, about those particular civilizations that did exist 12,000 years ago? What happened to them? I mean, shit, we can even go biblical. There is multiple cultural beliefs, Bible and the Quran, who speak about a great flood that happened at one point on planet Earth that wiped out everything. What's to say that there wasn't intelligence before that? And what we are seeing now, places like Göbekli Tepe, are people that actually had some of that technology that survived from the previous civilizations. But unfortunately, with time, all their history, all that knowledge has been just gone by the wayside or ignored because it doesn't fit a narrative. Oh no, this completely contradicts everything that we've been telling people for the past hundreds of years. So you know what, we're just going to bury this and put it away. That happens more than we know. And I go back to the great King Constantine, who is a very, very important political figure in the Bible and Catholicism and Christianity. What some people don't know, if any of you have done research or history on the libraries of Alexandria, the libraries of Alexandria were a hodgepodge, basically a massive library that held all the known history of the existing world at one time in one place. They had scrolls, they had books, they had scribes, they had archaeological finds and treasures and things like that that predated the time what we know now. Constantine and his people decided that went against their beliefs and destroyed it. If any of you have ever been pissed more reading on history, that is one thing, that is the one for me that triggers the shit out of me. Because the amount of knowledge that we had, that we would have had right now, at this moment, We are way behind the eight ball. And again, I'm okay with going day by day and teaching my kids what I'm teaching my kids. But at the same time now, as I get older and I'm seeing all these things, they're not conspiracy theories anymore. They're turning into facts that our civilization is older than we think. Things and people existed between our current time that have been forgotten. The pyramids are something very different than what you and I think they are. Why do we refuse to get answers to our history? Why are we so against finding out the truth? Is it because we're scared that it's going to go completely against our beliefs? Because if that's the case, then that's the wrong way to go about it. I think that's the one thing that we should all have a choice. It should be up to me and you to decide and determine whether I want to know something or not. It shouldn't be dictated by the government, but a lot of the governments and people in power are the ones that are deciding everything that we know. And I'm not okay with that. So anyways, thank you very much for listening to today's episode. I know this one was a little bit different. Hopefully I didn't lose many of you. It's probably my longest one I've released for a solid 52 minutes. But hopefully I sparked some interest in you. Do some research on your own if you don't believe any of this stuff. If you want to piggyback on some of the stuff, please look it up. It's worth the research on your own. The pyramid, the Sphinx, what they're really for, what they were really used for. You know, some people say they were electric power plants at one point because of the contents and things that they have found inside the pyramid, whatever that is. So again, I challenge you who are listening, do not be okay with being told how to think, what to do, what to say, and especially what to believe about our history, because we got all of it wrong. Remember, history is written by the people who win the wars, not the ones who lose them. So every story that we see, including our own here in the United States, was written by us, for us, because we won. How would it have been different if someone else had won? And what would they actually have said about us? The truth of it. It just makes you think. And again, so thank you very much for listening. The time is 9:58. I think I went a little bit long on this one, 9:53. And for some reason, my microphone's finally decided to work, y'all. But anyway, again, re-listen to the story, engage it, and then hopefully I sparked a little bit of interest in you like it sparked within me when I first found out about this. So with that, I leave you. Have a beautiful, beautiful night. Have a good evening. Have a great Sunday. Tomorrow I have to get up early in the morning because my daughter has another game tomorrow. She's going to crush it. We're going to win. The San Francisco 49ers are going to win tomorrow. I will dive into that probably on Monday. I'll record another episode. I think I'm going to start doing 2 of these a week, one in the beginning and one at the end, but we shall see. Either way, have a beautiful night. Thank you very much. And I will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you. God bless.